Hello and welcome to the Hook Shot podcast on the Miracle Sports Network. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Nate. Today we are talking about our mock lottery drafts for the upcoming NBA draft. So starting off with pick 15, I have Cole Anthony from North Carolina to the Magic. I like to pick a Cole Anthony to the Magic because I think they just need talent in that lineup and someone who can score. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Markelle Fultz as his contract's slowly coming to an end. He was kind of that scoring point guard that I see Cole Anthony being a little, but he's had some issues. Cole Anthony, I think, is maybe even being a little underrated in this draft. I have him all the way down here at 15, just outside the lottery. But I think he could contribute and be a scorer. I think there's also a chance that he might be able to slot in next to Markelle Fultz. He was in the 96th percentile in catch and shoot threes, and they also just need someone who can shoot. And I believe Cole Anthony can come in and shoot. And out of people available, I really think it's one of their best options.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with DJ Augustine's contract is up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the Magic just really need a guard, and Cole Anthony, I think, can play on ball or off ball. And like you said, yeah, he's a good shooter and could really just help the team in what already was a playoff year.
Yep.
Um, so I also had Cole Anthony at pick 15. We were in agreement on that pick. So any more to add on him?
Uh, Not really. But I think he'll fit in with the team, add some scoring, which I think is needed on that roster. His shooting could be a plus, and I think that'll be a great pick for them.
I think he's just to fix up some shot selection. He kind of takes a lot of bad shots, and his defense is pretty decent. So
Yeah.
overall, I mean, at 15, that's a pretty good value pick.
Okay,
Sorry,
then
who do you have at 16?
at 16, I have for the Blazers, I have Patrick Williams, a power forward out of Florida State. He's one of the youngest players in this draft. Recently turned 19. He's kind of that new modern four where he's kind of the small forward, power forward hybrid. But I really think the Trailblazers need the two things, well, I guess three things really I look at for them is they need a power forward, some shooting and defense. Specifically, maybe a power forward who can shoot. Because I look at some of the power forwards on the roster, and like Zach Collins is playing power forward. He's not necessarily quite the whole new NBA power forward, which Patrick Williams
Right.
is. And they were the second worst team last year in defensive efficiency, or third worst. I know they were bottom five for sure. And it like he might be a little raw. He might have some issues coming out, but at the end of the day, I think he just fits what they need perfectly with his ability to shoot. And I think he's one of the best defenders in the class. And he has a lot of potential. I'd probably prefer someone who can contribute possibly more right away, but I can't really pass up on the fit with Williams to the Blazers at this pick.
Yeah, I agree. That's not a bad pick. It's hard to know what they're doing with forward. With Carmelo, I think they liked, and I think they want to bring him back. But I mean, his contract's also up, and who knows if some team is going to come in and offer him a big contract that Portland doesn't want to pay because they are pretty high on the salaries, but they have a couple of contracts coming off next year. Um, yeah, I think Patrick Williams is a good fit there. I like him. Um, a little unsure because he never started well in college, but as previous drafts have shown some people who have never really started end up doing pretty well and become starters in the NBA. So in
Yeah.
Florida
I
State,
also think part of that, yeah, is just Florida State. They run a really
yeah,
deep team and they like to favor some upperclassmen with minutes. It's not super uncommon to see top-tier freshmen like Williams get less minutes in Florida State's system.
Right. Yeah, I think he'll definitely help out with that defense, and I mean, with Lillard and McCollum and Gary Trent coming off the bench, I don't think he'll be relied on to score that much.
No.
So for that pick, I had Jamius Ramsey. Jamius?
Jamias.
Jamias Ramsey. There you go. He's 19 years old from Texas Tech. He's a guard. 6'4". He was rumored to have a 6'10" wingspan. I couldn't find that confirmed anywhere, but that was the number that kept coming up. So I mean, that's great length either way, even if it ends up being like 6'8" or something. He's great length. He was such a good shooter from the corner. He shot over 60% from the corner from 3, and I mean, he can score on all 3 levels because he uses his long arms to finish at the rim and shoot from 3. Good in transition, and then he uses his body to defend pretty decently. So, even though I think Trailblazers needed I agree they probably need a forward. I had them taking a guard, just I think every team could always use more wings on the bench to score, and he can be relied on as just a great catch and shoot person, kind of a 3 and D guy a little bit. And yeah, I think they just take best player available. So,
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad pick. I think fit-wise might be a little weird with the emergence of Gary Trent Jr. He was great in the bubble, and you would think surely he's gonna get more minutes going forward. And I feel like they would maybe fit a similar role in that team. But Jamias
yeah,
Ramsey is, as you said, he's a fantastic shooter. I think he's one of the best scorers in the draft. Just his ability to score on all 3 levels and just put the ball in the hoop. It's really great to watch. He's also really young, but he's just 6'4". He's more of a combo guard than he is uh full. Maybe he can play the 2 and the 3. I see him more as a combo guard, where they do have Anthony Simons, who they like. He's progressing, as you just mentioned, Gary Trent, but they could just have it as the best player available on the board, and
yeah, it
I
would be a
wouldn't
little
complain.
cluttered, but I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I don't think you can pass up on someone who shot 60% from the corner. So,
Yeah, I mean, he's great. I didn't like all of his shot selection necessarily, just as he was kind of that main option on that Texas Tech team.
right.
And I I've heard some issues about like just his personality, and I've heard reports from some coaches saying that he doesn't get along well with his teammates. I don't know how much to buy
Mhm,
into that, but that might be a reason some people have him lower.
sure. Okay, so at pick 17, the Timberwolves are up again, and I have them taking Jaden McDaniels. He's a forward from Washington. He's 19 years old, and he's 6'10", 201 pounds with a 7-foot wingspan. So pretty good size, probably playing at power forward or center positions. Um, he's a good 3-point shooter. Can handle the ball even. At that height, he can shoot over anyone and is pretty fluid. I think he's playing small forward at Washington. Um, so I mean, to show that versatility, I mean, the size of probably a 4, but could also play the 3. Um, he's pretty versatile, great catch and shoot. On defense, he can just guard all those different positions. I have him with the Timberwolves just because I think the power forward is one of their weaker positions. Um, it's hard to say what they'll do with Hernan Gomez, and Jake Layman was kind of hurt a lot last season. So I think they just need another guy who can play the 4 or the Wolves' wings are just not as talented, so he could also play the 3, and just having someone that adaptable is really beneficial.
Yeah, I don't hate the pick. Is Jaden McDaniels is another one of those really weird players in this draft where, I mean, you can just tell he has talent. He's super athletic. That like just what he can do at 6'10" is very impressive.
Yeah,
But he had some struggles at Washington, kind of like some other top guys, and it's just really hard to project where he would go. I think he has solid potential as a scorer, but I really don't like his shot selection. I don't like to care so much about shot selection personally, especially with people who like to score the ball a ton. But he was the guy in the draft whose shot selection probably annoyed me the most. He took a lot of just open or like kind of like contested, just like maybe like run up and just pull up jumpers from the mid range, which is not a good shot in the NBA.
no,
I also thought about his fit in Minnesota. I'd agree Minnesota needs that power forward. They have like Hernan Gomez, James Johnson, Jared Vanderbilt, maybe Omari Spellman if he ever decides to come to the team could play there. There's some options there. Johnson has 1 year left in his contract. Who knows if he'll be back? I like his fit there. Hernan Gomez is a restricted free agent. I
right,
think I think Jaden McDaniels could potentially fill a very similar role to Hernan Gomez right away because I believe he'll be able to shoot, and hopefully, if he's not just creating his own shot as much, he might be able to shoot a little better. And but I think he's just kind of Hernan Gomez in a way with a little more upside because he has that defensive upside in that mold of a guy like Jonathan Isaac, who I don't think is anywhere near quite as good at coming out of Florida State, but he gets compared there because of his frame. And he
right.
like it's just a pure bet and potential. And since this is Timberwolves' second pick, I'd be perfectly fine with taking a bet on potential. And he might be
Yeah,
able to hit that
he's
ceiling to be that power forward they need for the future.
yeah, he definitely has some things to fix, and supposedly he was benched by his coach in
Yep,
college
he
because he
was.
was, um, just, like, not being a team player and poor mentally, so I don't know, maybe a character question mark guy a little bit, but 6'10" with some good ball handling skills, definitely has high potential.
Yeah, I definitely considered it for the Timberwolves here, but there's just at the end of the day, there's just so many guys that
Yeah.
are still available, and it's another great pick to be for their second pick. And with that, I had them taking Tyrese Maxey, who you had, I believe, going to the Pistons at 7 in your
Yeah, I had them in
mock.
the lottery.
But Tyrese Maxey I think he's a great player. He just kind of dropped a few spots just because of just finding him a good fit. I don't think the fit is like perfect in Minnesota. More of a combo guard. They just took another guard with Anthony Edwards in the first pick, but this is just a pure best player available for the Wolves. And I don't think their whole defense issue people like to bring up with their team with a core center around Towns and Russell is as bad as people think it is, but you can always add defensive players. And Tyrese Maxey, I think, is just like Patrick Williams, the last pick, one of the best defenders in this draft. Now, I would have loved if Patrick Williams is here. I think he could definitely be that 4 we need. I'd rather have Williams than McDaniels personally, but he just went 1 pick before me. So I'm
Yeah.
going to take Maxey with his two-way game. I really think his defense is being underrated. People don't talk about it enough, but I really love watching him on defense. He's one of my favorite defending guards in this draft. We talked a little bit on our first episode about his scoring as well. I think he could come off and score off the bench, which I don't. I think he could be maybe the most consistent scorer off the bench. I don't really like a whole lot of it's this scoring on the Timberwolves bench right now. The Timberwolves have never really had
Right.
a great bench. He may be
They don't
able
have
to
a
change
lot.
that. I mean, he might have to fight for minutes. I see him more as a shooting guard, but the Timberwolves do only
Yeah,
have 2 point guards. He might be able to get some more minutes if he plays some point guard. And at 6'3", it it might work out, but there's just too much talent for me to pass on Tyrese Maxey here with his two-way game for the Timberwolves.
yeah. I mean, I had him going pretty high, like you said. Um, what stands out to me is just his like confidence in shooting. I mean, he will pull up from deep range, and he won't necessarily make it, but I think he'll get there at some point. And he's good athleticism, like you said, a good defender. And I think just if his offensive game catches up to his defense, he could, I mean, have potential to be a multi-time All-Star, borderline All NBA guy in the future. So he's only 19, coming off the bench. The Wolves bench needs a lot of help. So yeah, I love that pick.
Mhm. And going to pick 18 with the Mavericks, I have them taking Josh Green, the shooting guard out of Arizona. And when it came down to it, I just think Dallas needs wings. I think you could argue wings may be the most important position in the league right now. And
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
there's a big depth problem in wings just overall in the NBA. There's a lot of teams that will have depth in like center and guard, but they struggle for wing depth. And I think Dallas is one of those teams. So I'm just going to go with the best guard on my board, which is Josh Green. I also considered Tyler Bay just for his defense, but Josh Green, while his defense definitely is not as good as Tyler Bay, contributes a little more in the offensive game. I think he's just your typical 3-and-D guy. I think he still has some issues to work out, but at the end of the day, he's just that 3-and-D guy. He can shoot the three. He can come in, contribute some meaningful defense. While he has some things to fix up, you can't go wrong with adding wing depth when you're Dallas here. And I think he can just come in and contribute right away.
Yeah, he's definitely, I think right now, a great 3 and D guy. Um, he struggles with being on ball, so
Hmm.
by staying at that wing, hopefully they don't rely on him to kind of be a playmaker, even like a secondary playmaker. Um, like he can excel coming off the bench, just like in a very specific 3 and D role. Because he was good catching, or good shooting off the catch, and plays well in transition, but was bad shooting off or on ball and struggled passing and ball handling. But yeah, Arizona, because there's three high guys for Arizona, and somehow I just looking at all three of them, I liked all of them, but somehow wondered why they weren't a better team. I mean, I think they were ranked in the top 25 at the end
Yeah.
of the season, but I was like, you have three guys who I think I might have had all three of them in the first round or at least close to, and somehow they weren't up there in the top 10. So I don't know if there's something to do with those guys, but
Yeah, that's a fair
individually, I
point.
thought they were all good.
I mean, they were easily one of the most hyped teams coming into the season this
Right.
year, and they definitely disappointed.
But I wouldn't say any of them like underperformed though either. So they just somehow didn't win as many games as they should have. So I don't know if that's a concern with any of their players, if someone's to blame for that, but I don't know. I like Josh Green. I had him pretty high up. So
And who'd you have
so
at 18?
then so to Dallas, I actually had them taking a forward and taking Precious
Achua?
Achua.
Achua.
Yeah, so he's 20 years old from Memphis, 6'9", 234 pounds, with a nice 7'1" wingspan. He he's just a really fun post player to watch. He's kind of that explosive dunker, who can also handle the ball a little bit and get downhill and drive to the basket, run on transition. He is pretty good at playing the pick and roll, which is heavily used in the NBA and one of the key kind of aspects you look for in a big man. He was a great rebounder, 10.8 per game, which I think was top 10 college with that. Good length, pretty solid defender. Um, yeah, I think I went for another just best player available. I mean, Dallas definitely in the
Yeah.
playoffs is looking at a improvement in their team and thinking they can make a title run probably next year. So I wasn't exactly falling in love with the backup bigs that Dallas had, and with Porzingis kind of showing some injury problems this season and kind of throughout his career a little bit, having a guy like Precious to come off the bench. Um, I really liked his game, except he just struggled on his 3-point shot wasn't like great, and he's not a great guy to switch off on defense with him guarding on the perimeter. But I think that's things you can cover up and coach up. So
I mean, I think one of the things I like the most about him is his switchability, so I disagree there. He's I think he showed just how good he can be in the defensive side of the floor and that switchability, which is probably the first thing I'd mention when it comes to his defense. Just to have a guy at that size, 6'9", 234 pounds, just who can switch like that is an extremely valuable asset. And Achu is a guy I've fluctuated on. If you asked me a month ago, I was super high on him, but I've kind of soured mainly on his offensive side to the point where I'm probably lower on him than I should be. I I mean I know I've said this for the last few guys, but it's just true. He's one of the better defenders in the draft as well. Just he can like I think he's a nice four in today's game as well because he's a solid interior defender, but he's still athletic enough and has the abilities to defend on the perimeter.
right.
And I just really love his switchability, as I mentioned. It's just his offensive game. I see some really weird shots, just contested shots he just throws up, and I I just don't see a lot of options for him on offense. But just I think his role can just be a defensive big coming off the bench, and that's incredibly valuable. And I think
I
there's
think
also
on oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say I think there's a little question around him as well, just with the whole Wiseman situation at Memphis. Chua came in as
Sure.
gonna be the power forward and all of a sudden had to go and play center, so his role had to change at Memphis. And I think he handled it great, but he may have been even better at power forward. Although with that, I think he may also be able to play some small ball center, and he has that since he has a little bit of college, and I don't think any team can go wrong with taking him.
Yeah, I think his switchability looks good on tape, because he makes up for it with his wingspan and is able to I guess I saw a lot of him getting, like, driven on, and he gets behind the defender, but then he's able to
Yeah.
contest the shot, like, over top, which in college works fine because the people aren't as tall and aren't as athletic. But in the NBA, I could see him being attacked a little bit and him his size not really standing out as much in the NBA compared to college players. So,
Yeah.
but I think that's just like a footwork thing. I don't think it's like an athleticism thing. So,
Probably just need an adjustment period.
yeah. So, moving on to Brooklyn. Brooklyn's a really interesting team with I mean, Durant's joining them next year. Kyrie is still there and will be back healthy. I look at their team and I think they really loved Joe Harris this year. kind of is
Yeah.
just that lockdown spot up shooter guy. And his contract is up, and I expect him to go somewhere else personally. I think he's gonna get paid a lot because he looked really good this year. Um, unless Brooklyn moves on from Levert, which there's been talks that he could be traded to free up some money. I don't know. So I have them taking Josh Green, who we just talked about, kind of fulfilling that catch and shoot role while also playing some good defense, kind of replacing Joe Harris. Um, I think in Brooklyn, I mean, with Kyrie and with Durant, he's not going to be expected to really do anything, and he can just play his very specific role. It was like a 3 and D guy, and I just liked the fit.
Yeah, I think it's a great fit as well. I'd have 100% taken Green for the Nets if he was available, but he wasn't on my board. And I think Brooklyn's another one of those teams, maybe even worse than Dallas, that really just need some wing depth. When I look at their
Yeah,
roster, like they have two really solid point guards, they have two solid centers, they have Durant coming back with a whole bunch of extra players down there like Torian Prince, maybe Rodi Karooks. And especially if maybe though if Allen and Levert get packaged maybe for a third star or something, they really need some wing players. And just Josh Green, as I just said the last pick, I think he's just the best wing available. And you can't really go wrong there. I went a
yeah,
little different. Just I thought there's a little bit of a drop off on some of the wings. And I took RJ Hampton for the Nets. And I think it's more just it's just hope like it's just the talent. I can't really pass up on him too much anymore. He he's a little more of a combo guard again. So while you need that wing depth, I think he could maybe play some on the 2 and also on the 1. And he might be a little raw. I think there's a lot of questions around him as well, as there are a lot of people in this draft. But
yeah,
he's I think he's a little raw, and he can come in on that Nets team and take time to develop. And if he becomes a point guard, a great point guard for you, I think that's great because I don't think Dinwiddie's coming back. I just don't think they'll be able to afford him. I think
yeah.
he's coming to his last year. He
Uh,
also
I
said
think he's got another year
he has
left,
more. I
and
don't
then a
know,
player.
but
I think he's got a couple. So,
he also said that he's letting social media decide his next team, which is odd. But if they don't
oh
pick
yeah,
the
that's
Nets,
right.
maybe he'll go somewhere else if he follows through on that. But
Or
either
I
way,
thought that
he
was.
could.
I thought he'd get a certain amount of money raised or something, and
Yeah, I don't.
I think
I
they
don't
wanted.
remember.
I think he wanted people to pay his contract, and I don't think he raised that much money.
It's a
So
weird
it
situation.
was weird. Yeah.
But either way, I don't think he's coming back after his contract. So RJ Hampton could slot in and become that backup point guard when he leaves. And there's just so many questions surrounding him and his time in New Zealand. New Zealand was a disaster of a team. They started out horrendously. They had, I'm not exactly sure. I don't follow the NBL quite as much, but they had so many injuries. They brought in Glenn Rice Jr., who almost immediately got suspended for some off-court issues, which also led, I believe, to like their owner getting suspended.
Oh
It was just an awful situation.
yeah.
And then at the end of the season, they all came back and they just went on a miracle run, almost kind of like what you see. I remember like instantly, I think of what the Heat did a few years ago with Dion Waiters leading the charge, or maybe even a little what the Phoenix Suns did in the bubble this year. Just one of those miracle runs, and definitely better towards the end of the season. And I just think there's a lot of his issues in New Zealand can be attributed to his situation. And I'm just taking a bet on the talent at this point if I'm Brooklyn.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what he and Ball, who are both in New Zealand and skipped college, do when they come back. Um, I like RJ Hampton's offense a lot.
Hmm.
I think, I mean, he's just a good athlete, and he can dribble, he can shoot a little bit. next to his defense for, like, pros on defense, I have absolutely nothing written. I think his defense is horrible. He kinda just watched people drive past him in New Zealand, it looked like, and whenever he got screened, it was kinda he just took himself out of the play. He didn't really fight through it, and to me, that's an effort thing, so who knows what happens with that, if that can be coached out of him or not, but I think offensively, will be fine, and I think Brooklyn with their stars would be fine taking a guy like that, so
Yeah, I'd agree. Well,
alright, so Miami at 20, who do you have?
yeah, I have them taking Trey Jones, the point guard out of Duke. And this draft class is just littered with point guards. There's so many
Yeah,
options. They could really go a lot of ways, but I really think they should take a point guard just because there's so many point guards. And I look at the roster and they only have 2 point guards in Goran Dragic and Kendrick Nunn. And I know Nunn started pretty much the whole season. Goran Dragic is I think he's leading them in scoring right now in there as
he's
we're
played well in
recording
the
this in
playoffs,
the
but
playoffs. But he's
his
getting
contract's
older.
also up.
He's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, with how he's playing right now, I would think they'd want to bring him back, but also with how he's playing, he might get more money than they can afford
Right.
because they have some bad contracts on the team. And I no matter what though, even if he does come back, he's getting older. And Kendrick Nunn is not a guy who can run the offense. I'm not saying he's bad, it's just he's definitely like a scorer. He's just not that traditional run the offense point guard, which I think that they do need. And if I'm looking at the point guards, there's some tempting people left on my board with Kyra Lewis and Teo Maladon, but
Yep.
just don't want to pass on Trey Jones. I think he's underrated in this draft class. He There's just so much value with him. He's he's I mean you could argue he's the best defending point guard in the draft. He's 6'3", which is not small at all. A lot of people
No.
compare him to his brother Tyus, and I do think there's a lot of similarities there, but he's bigger than Tyus. I think he's a better defender coming out. And like he's that defensive point guard who can just run their offense, which I don't think Miami has. And that's just an incredible asset for them to add. He can come in and contribute minutes right away. And he really just adds an element that I don't think they have on their roster. So I would just take Trey Jones over the other point guards if I'm Miami.
Yeah, I think I like Trey Jones. I mean, I have him falling in my draft just because it's such a point guard heavy draft,
Yeah. I feel like a lot of
but
people do.
yeah, I I think he probably is the best point guard defender in the draft. Um, I mean, he just does everything well on point or on defense, steals, disrupting shots. Um, is just aware to get around screens and everything. I just don't see him. The only problem I have with him is he's not a great scorer. He doesn't like create a lot of space or anything, and he's not the best athlete to just kind of like out. ath- He doesn't have enough of athleticism to just like finish however way he wants. Um, but yeah, he probably is one of the two best facilitators I think in this draft. Um, Probably him and Cassius Winston. I think Trey Jones just doesn't have a huge ceiling. Um, I kind of see his ceiling as
Yeah.
like maybe a low end starting point guard, but right now with Miami, their win now. I mean, with all the people on their team, Butler, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Harrow, Bam, they don't need scores. So especially if Goran gets if Dragic gets a huge contract, Trey Jones could definitely be someone that fits in their rotation really well at a position they need value. So staying with
Yeah.
the point guards, I have Nico Mannion in this pick. Um, Another Arizona guy. I kind of picked him for some of the same reasons as you. I think he is a pretty good facilitator actually. Um, Watching his tape, he was a lot better facilitating than I thought he would be. He plays the pick and roll pretty well. Um, so just offers that scoring. He can he kind of likes his mid range. Um, will shoot off the dribble a little bit. Um, he can't really finish at the rim just because he's 190. He's 6'3", 190, which isn't terrible size. But he's a negative wingspan. So his wingspan is less or shorter than his height, which kind of hurts him when driving and going around the bigs. So, but he had a really high assisted turnover ratio that stood out a lot to me, and showing how he can distribute the ball. I think I have him going to my yeah, Miami for really similar reason as you did, Trey Jones. So
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Nico Mannion. He was hyped coming into college,
he was very
and
hyped.
yeah, he definitely disappointed to some extent. And I'd agree with some of those points. Think that he I think he has some shot creation tools and he can definitely shoot, but he he took a lot of just I saw a lot of, I mean, the mid ranges as well, but also I think he just took some really bad threes. And I guess he's another guy the shot selection does actually concern me with. And at the end of the day, his size and his length are probably going to hold him back in the NBA. He's athletic, but he's not like super crazy athletic to make up for it quite as much.
Yeah,
He's not a good finisher around the rim. I don't see much on defense at all. And even if he did, he's certainly not versatile. You would never want him guarding a wing with his size. He needs to
I
have more strength, but
I actually thought he was pretty decent at defense. Um, I mean, not fantastic, but didn't foul, and I thought his lateral quickness staying at the defenders was pretty good actually.
I mean, even if
Um,
you wanted to say it wasn't bad, it's still, I think, just
right, as long as he doesn't
the
switch, like he
versatility
can
is not
only
there at
guard
all.
ones. So
Yeah, but I think I do agree that I think he can run an offense well, and I think he's just a big gamble, and he's like you see what he can get if he can shoot. Like if you want to shoot, I think there's better point guards still available on both our boards who can shoot better. Maybe like a Tyrell Terry comes to mind. If you want to play make,
yeah.
I mean Trey Jones is there still. I think Tail Maledon's a better playmaker. Both of them I think just have well, I think Maledon definitely has more upside. I would just take just comparing him to a guy like Trey Jones, I guess who I'll take the floor of Trey Jones better than the ceiling of Mannion in that situation.
Yeah. So moving on to pick 21, the 76ers, whose team is kind of a mess, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I mean, all the contracts are on the books, so there's not much they can do about it unless they trade. But I have them taking Patrick Williams, the Florida State forward who we talked about earlier. He sued him quite a few picks before this, but I think he can just help fulfill a role in Philly um, with some catch and shoot, under pretty long. He just, I think they need some forward depth a little bit, and um, yeah, Patrick Williams is just too good of a talent to pass up.
Yeah. I'd agree. He's too good of a talent to pass up, but I don't think there's any chance he's available here personally.
Probably not,
But
but
I mean, as your board fell, just I think you
right,
take him, and I think that backup power forward, or maybe like just the forward, the 3-4 spot is definitely a position they could add talent to
yeah.
that roster. It'll be interesting to see if they break up Embiid and Simmons and what else they do, if they can get off of Horford's contract or what.
Tobias
But
Harris's contract is also really bad, in my
yeah,
opinion.
but I don't think
But I mean,
they're gonna move
they have
him.
him for the next 4 years, so I don't think they can. I think it'd be hard to get rid of either one of those.
Yeah. And I had them going with Kyra Lewis, the point guard of Alabama, who this is definitely lower than I'd want, but it's just another case of there's just so many point guards in this draft.
Yeah.
And I really would think the Sixers would go point guard here just with how many there are. And they started to switch up, at least like coming into the bubble, putting Ben Simmons at the 4. They're having Shake Milton play point guard, and it sounds like they might be trying to move away from Ben Simmons at point guard. I think it might work better for the team. Just you're not gonna have Horford and Embiid on the court together, but with this many point guards in this draft, and especially you can get a guy with like Kyra Lewis here, I just feel like it's just take a point guard. If worst case scenario, come off the bench. And Lewis, I think, might take a little bit of time to develop and transition to the NBA. I still think he's a little raw, but his shooting numbers are great. So hopefully that could continue. And the Sixers could definitely use some shooting. And I mean, that speed is insane. And I think he can run an offense, which is pretty important. If especially maybe coming off the bench in that team, just because there's not really, I don't think there's anyone coming off the bench who can really run an offense.
No.
We'll have to see what Ben Simmons' role in the offense is next year still. But I would just take a point guard, and Lewis is just the best point guard available on my board.
Yeah, I had him going to the lottery actually, so
Yep.
I really like him. Um, really just the biggest question mark is his size. He's pretty small and very slim, so he needs to bulk up a little bit. Um, but yeah, he's got the speed, great athleticism. I think he can facilitate the offense. I mean, he's only 19 and has already done it 2 years in SEC play, so
hmm
I think he's not a bad pick.
Well, going to pick 22 with Denver, I'm taking Jemias Ramsey, and this is just a pick for talent. They have so much depth everywhere with all these steals they just keep getting, and I think Jemias Ramsey's a guy who fits all these talents that they get the drop, like Michael Porter and
Mhm.
maybe Bol if he develops into anything, and just other guys they've had like Malik Beasley even. They just get so much talent on that team, and I said I'm taking Jemias Ramsey. I think it could be a decent situation for him to go to. I don't think he should come in and be relied on to be an immediate scoring option, but he might develop to be a really good scorer. And I think some of the issues he has, I think can hopefully be maybe eased in a team like Denver, where you have to fight for your minutes. And
Right.
I think there's a really big team aspect in Denver compared to most other teams in the league. And I think hopefully he can go in there and fix that, and just I think Denver will just take best player available, and they're in a perfect spot to just take a great talent who's just fallen.
Yeah, I think he would be great at Denver. I think their wing depth has fallen off a little bit in the past couple years or so, than what it used to be, but I think their team's gotten better. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think just having someone who can come in and shoot and defend well off the bench. I think his game is pretty team friendly. Whether he is pretty team friendly, we'll see. But yeah, I think he's a good pick in Denver. So when I look at Denver, I see glaring holes at the 4 and 5. Um, especially with Paul Millsap's contract's up, Mason Plumlee's contract is up, and
Jeremy Grant.
Jeremy Grant's contract is up. Um, yeah. Well, he's a player option, so he could take that. But um, I really see them needing to fulfill that hole there. So I have them taking Jalen Smith. power forward slash center-ish, from Maryland. So you had him going in the lottery. I have him falling
Hmm.
to here. Um, but he's kind of a little bit of that modern kind of 4 or 5 you look for now, where he can shoot the 3 when he's open. He's a pretty decent rebounder, a good defender, shot blocker, can guard in space. Um, I think he has to bulk up a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about that. He can just really fulfill that role of coming off the bench, and Denver doesn't really go with your traditional big as much. So looking for someone like Jalen Smith to fulfill some of those holes, I think just like fits their team style pretty well.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice for him to add depth there. It's I don't think Smith will be available here either. I think he's been rising up draft boards, and I think NBA GMs really see his value. But if he's still here, why not take him with Denver? I think a big question there would be clearly just can they bring back their depth? And also, I think Bol Bol's a little of a wild card. I don't see Bol Bol as just like I don't see him as like maybe a like an insane piece with like insane value
Right.
that maybe something like NBA Twitter would have or something, but he definitely did show some flashes in the bubble. But he did struggle. I thought he struggled with the Windy City Bulls and the G League last year, but did decent in the bubble, and he might be able to come in and give meaningful minutes there. And but I think Smith could easily carve out minutes on that roster.
So here we're about halfway through, and I thought we'd maybe address the recent news on the NBA draft possibly being delayed till November, I believe they've talked about.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess my initial thoughts, I was kind of surprised. And it makes sense a little bit. I know the NBA was trying to get the draft like immediately after the playoffs, which for those teams involved, especially in the finals, would be pretty difficult. But pushing it to November, it's kind of when they want to start the season in that kind of mid-November-ish time frame, I think is what the plan is right now. Um, I guess I'm just a little confused how they want to implement that, and then getting all these rookies in kind of immediately as the season starts, I think doesn't really bode well for all the people getting drafted and then having to play games, but not really having practice with their team or any transition to getting into an NBA team. Um,
I mean,
so I
I'd
think
expect it to be similar to what's happening in the NFL right now, where there's not going to be any preseason games. Pretty much rookies come in and they play in training camp, and you just kind of have to go off of that. I think it's a little more important to the NFL just with how many roster spots and positions there are. But you definitely saw this year a lot more rookies maybe not making the team, and surely you wouldn't think they'd get as much playing time as normal.
right,
And I think that something similar to that could transition to the NBA, where it's just not a big gap between the draft and the start of the season, which I'm not sure when the season's going to start at this point. I believe Adam Silver said he wanted to wait till we can make sure fans can come back. And it's, I mean, it's sad that it got delayed, but
right.
just have to make do.
Yeah. I just worry with this draft class a little bit because I don't think there's necessarily a high amount of immediate contributors. Um, they'll play key roles on their team, as in like they're some of the better players on their team. Um, as this is a weaker draft class and has just kind of a lot of role players and people that kind of need to develop to become a bench player. Um, we'd see how many of these guys actually make the team, or if a lot go to the G League, assuming the G League happens even. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I just thought that
it'll
was
be
something
interesting.
something worth addressing here as the news just broke a couple days ago or so. But moving on from that, we'll jump to pick 23 at Utah. Um, Utah, it's another team that has some contracts coming off. Conley's got that player option, which I'm assuming he'll pick up for $34 million. Because I don't see him getting paid that on the market. Jordan Clarkson is a free agent. So I think they just need kind of a wing. They just need some depth on the bench, in my opinion. And so I have Leandro Bolmaro. He's kind of a guard slash forward from Spain. He's 20 years old, 6'7", 185 pounds with a 6'8" wingspan. So what I like about him is he's pretty good finisher. He's really crafty for his size, can handle the ball, play in transition. He doesn't have a great shot, um, which might raise some question marks, but his playmaking potential, I think, is just really there. And Utah, I mean, they almost advanced to the playoffs, lost that heartbreaker. I think this might be kind of just a best player available scenario for them, and having a guy who can play make off the bench on the wing, um, plus also play some defense with a little bit of work, I think you might as well take him.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about Bolmaro. The thing I hate the most about him is his turnovers. He
Yeah, he turns the ball over a lot.
he I mean, he's kind of that point forward. He's 6'7", and it'd be great for him to come in and I mean, just the ability he has, like, with his IQ and playmaking is certainly there, but I don't think that really matters as much if he's just gonna turn the ball over. He
Yeah, he
goes
tries to be too
for Yeah, he goes
flashy.
for a lot of flashy
Yeah,
passes, and we're just results in turnovers. He just makes bad decisions, and he's I don't know what I get out of him, but he like I think he can come in and hopefully maybe he can play the 4 for them because I think they need a 4,
yeah,
and I don't think it's a bad pick, but there's just some questions with Bolmaro I have.
yeah. I think flashiness can be coached out of people, especially I don't know. I mean, he was kind of a big shot in Spain. I think he was on what Barcelona's second team, I believe. Um, so he's kind of one of the probably the better guys on his team if he's on the second team. But I think coming to the NBA, he can be put in his place and kind of seen his role a little bit and not probably stop all that flashiness.
Yeah, uh kind of in a I guess in a similar route, maybe position wise a little. I'm going Precious Achua, who we had going on earlier. Maybe more that traditional big. But when I look at Utah, they just really need that guy to play the 4, which Bolmaro might be able to. But I look at who they have playing now. I mean, they have Bojan Bogdanovic, who he's certainly a great player, averaging 20 points a game.
Yeah,
He's fine at the 4. He's maybe a little more that new hybrid 3-4 guy. They have Royce O'Neal playing there, who I love Royce O'Neal, but he's 6'4", and I'd maybe want to get someone bigger in there. And I think Precious Achua is just a perfect fit here. One of the best players on my board left. He can come in and he can bring something that maybe a guy like Bogdanovich doesn't bring with a lot of great defense. And I think he can also maybe rotate a few minutes at center if they ever need to, with just probably Gobert and Bradley down there. But Yang, Georges Niang has had, he's up and down. I think Achua's
yeah, he's
definitely
having
better.
moments, but
I think that would allow Joe Ingles to play more 3 Bogdanovich can play 4, and Achiuwa could just be he can just be that energy bench piece, and I think he would just help the team
Oh,
immensely.
yeah, I mean, I have him as I mean, he's my best player that didn't go in the lottery, in my opinion, on my board. So, I mean, I have him pretty high. I mean, if he's here, definitely take him. Um, just kind of with fits and everything, who knows how everything will fall. But
Yep.
okay, who do you have going to Milwaukee then at 24?
Okay, I have them taking Grant Riller out of Charleston. He's he's a very intriguing player. His biggest downside is his age, which is
Yeah,
23, and I think he's gonna turn 24 as a rookie. And I I think he's just one of the best shot creators in the draft. Just his ability to score is just insane. It's so fun to watch. And I look at the Bucks clearly of disappointment in the playoffs. And
mhm,
already I see a lot of like trade ideas for Chris Paul or someone like that. And I think that'd be a big get for them. But I think it's just they need a guy who can just like create his own shot. Because I look at their starting lineup, Giannis is not really a. I mean, Giannis as great as he is, he's not really just a guy who can just create his own shot, just go
no, he's not
ISO
a
and maybe
pure
shoot a three.
scorer. Yeah,
No, Chris Middleton's not that either. Chris Middleton, I think. I mean, he's fantastic in his own right as well, but he's not. He doesn't create, and I think they kind of force him that role a little, and it's not great. But
mhm,
I see Middleton maybe on that team more as a third option, which is hard to say as good he is. But they just really need someone who can go in and score the ball, and I just think Grant would be a perfect pick for them here. They like he might just be that guy next season. This There's a decent chance this could be Giannis's last year in Milwaukee coming to next
right,
season.
his contract is up and
And you have to if I'm the Bucks, I'm going all in to try to keep him because you don't let a guy like Giannis just leave. If like even if it backfires, I'd be fine as long as knowing like you just went all in to keep Giannis. And I think Riller is just a guy who can come in and make that impact. He can definitely contribute early at point guard, maybe a little some shooting guard, but
yep.
just it's just that scoring ability. He's just such a good scorer and he can create his own shot. And I would just be hoping that I bet on the chance that he can contribute that in year one with the Bucks. And if he can, that could just be an incredibly valuable pick for them.
Yeah, I like him. I mean, like you said, his scoring is phenomenal. Um, his defense is pretty good actually as well when he puts the effort in. Um, but yeah, the two big question marks. He's 23. Like you said, his age is up there, and I mean, he was playing at College of Charleston, which I mean, in no
Yeah.
means is good competition level. Um, but I mean, we've seen several guards come out and succeed from kind of lesser schools. I mean, John Morant was what at Murray State, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, and um, Damian Lillard was at a small school. Steph Curry. Um, so I mean, there's definitely people recently, a lot of people recently coming out of these schools who can just score the ball. Um, I mean, I think all those guys have better athleticism than Riller, but so I don't think any of those are fair comparisons for him. But I see him kind of as just a good bench scorer, kind of six man maybe type guy. Um, yeah, I think he can come in and immediately contribute to Milwaukee, who just I don't know needs to figure something out.
Yeah.
'Cause they're so good in the regular season, like one of some of the best teams ever in the regular season, but playoffs come and nothing happens.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I don't think they try to answer the questions in the draft, and then there's a solid chance
no,
they can
probably
even trade
not.
the pick. But if they're drafting someone, I think at this position, Riller is the guy who can come in and have your highest chance of contributing right away and being what you need to fill your holes.
Yeah, I agree. So I had Milwaukee taking RJ Hampton here. Um, it's not the best fit for them. Um, I don't know how much. I think he can contribute some offensively here, potentially with his athleticism. Um, Probably doesn't get a lot of playing time, honestly, here with Milwaukee, but he was just still on my board, and I think he's just too high of a talent for a team to pass up, especially especially if Milwaukee's not expecting Giannis to come back. Because if Giannis is gone, they probably blow up their team. So I think if they see that happening, maybe drafting a guy like RJ who might need a year or two to develop, and then kind of having him as a piece um, for the rebuild is not a bad pick.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything there. I had Hampton to the Bucks in my first mock draft I did, but I just wanted to move him up a little higher, so I moved him up. But he, I think his position coming in is he can come in and play that third string point guard
Yep.
slash shooting guard. I would rather play him over Frank Mason. And I mean, looking else, there's like, I mean, he's Kyle Korver. He's old and a free agent. He can also maybe play some small forward. And they're very different players, but just looking where he'd get minutes and Sterling Brown, he's not the best player. I think there's definitely some minutes he could be had there, and I'd agree. It's just he's a very high potential pick, and the potential just this late is a steal, no matter what team you are.
Yep.
And he just he's a little bit of insurance if Giannis actually does leave, where you can have some. I mean, you can just have a little extra talent because, like, looking at the roster, if Giannis leaves, it gets interesting real quick because
Right. Chris Middleton will probably be gone. There's no reason keeping him. Brooke Lopez will be
I mean
gone.
I mean, Lopez is getting up there in age, Wes Matthews getting up there in age, George Hill's
Yeah.
up there in age. Like, they definitely lack young talent. Like, I mean, DiVincenzo's a great piece, but outside him and Giannis, who's still young, there's just not really any young talent. What we have to do just add young talent, and Hampton's great talent to add.
Yeah. So keeping it moving, we're on to 25. Pick 25 with Oklahoma City. Um, so yeah, the Thunder of Chris Paul. I've seen a lot of people talking about people trading for Chris Paul. Um, and I think Chris Paul's probably going to finish maybe third in the MVP voting or so this year. Could be fourth. And I think he just meant so much to Oklahoma City, who I think could take a step up if they keep him next season. Um, so I have them taking a center because Nerlens Noel's contract is up, and I think they could just use some more bench depth there. So I have them going with Vernon Carey Jr., 19 years old, Duke center, 6'10", 270 with a 7'1" wingspan. So he is a big, big guy, 270. Um, what stands out is his explosive dunking. He can just really play that dunk role very well, as that kind of energy guy off the bench who can show some flashy dunks to kind of just get the team energized. He actually was a decent three-point shooter, but he took very few attempts. But his percentage was pretty good. He's good at drawing free throws. Strong finish under the basket. He can just use his size, and he was just played so powerful. Um, He's a pretty good post defender, a good amount of blocks. Um, Pretty much his only struggles were his perimeter defense. He doesn't move his feet as fast to keep up with that. And when he was double teamed, struggled to find the open man and kind of would just force a shot under the basket. Um, but I think coming off the bench there, um, Oklahoma City, I see them as kind of a gritty team, and Vernon Carey is kind of a gritty player to fit that style.
Yeah, I don't hate the pick. I it's just my issue with Vernon Carey is he's more that traditional big man that's definitely phasing out of the league really quickly. And you see guys come into the league that, like, I mean, guy who just comes off to my mind right away is Jahlil Okafor. Maybe a little bit that
Mhm.
Duke connection, but Okafor is definitely a great talent. It's just he's certainly struggled in the league, but there's just not really much of a place for a guy like him. And I think one of Carey's biggest redeeming factors is hopefully his little bit of that shot. It certainly wasn't on high
It's
volume, but
no, it's a very low volume, but I think he can work on it in the off season. He probably already has, gained some confidence in it, and I think he
yeah,
can
I mean it's
kinda step
it's
more in that stretch 5 role.
it's better than nothing at all.
Right.
And he also has some weight concerns, maybe being a little too overweight, but
Yeah.
I don't hate the pick for Oklahoma City. I actually had them taking a center as well, a little different route. I'm taking Daniel Turu from Minnesota, and I there's just I like point guards. There's also a solid amount of centers, just kind of in this late first, early second range, and it's just kind of take your pick. And the main reason I'm going with Turu here is still just that 3-point shot. I think there's definitely more intrigue in a Turu shot than there is with Carey,
There is, yeah.
and I and like I think True is also a really good rim protector, which is still valuable. I think he's definitely not anywhere near as athletic as some other guys, maybe like a Zeke Naji or something, but
Right.
I think he's a better defender. He's a great rebounder. I mean, the production there in a Big Ten school is that's all there. I I think he's probably a first round talent, like late first probably, and just with who's available, I could see Oklahoma City taking a center, as you said, with Noel's contract being up. The It sounds like they might be going towards full rebuild, just from some stuff I've been hearing from Presti and Chris Paul. Maybe Steve Adams will leave too, and
Yeah.
I just think it'd be a great piece for them to add. And they have so many picks coming up; it's pretty insane. Just I'd be fine with taking a Turu.
Yeah, I mean, I love Oturu. I went to school at Minnesota and have personally been to the majority of his games in his career. So watching him play, I don't know. I love him, but I think I on my board tried not to get too excited about him for sentimental reasons. Um, his great length, 7'2" wingspan. Watching him, I don't know if his athleticism is quite there to match at the NBA. He definitely needs to get
No,
quicker. I think could develop some strength. Um, but his potential is there. I mean, watching him from his freshman year to his sophomore year, freshman year he struggled a lot at scoring, couldn't shoot the ball to save his life. And then second year, he also has this good mid range that I think is a lot better than the percentages show. And his growing confidence in 3-point shot for the first time in his life taking last year. Um, I think is good. I mean, he's put up some of the most dominant moments I've ever seen from a player, um, where he just goes and he will score no matter what. He fights for the rebounds, uh, plays hard on defense. He loves the game of basketball and I think works hard at it. So, and he's only 20. I think he turns 21 pretty soon though, so he'll come in as a rookie 21. But
yeah.
um, just I think that potential growth from year 1 to year 2 for him, and I'm already showing he can be like that stretch player. Yeah, it is a good pick.
Mhm. Well, moving to Boston with pick 26, I have them taking Leandro Bolmaro from Barcelona. And pretty much the main reason I have them taking him is they don't have roster spaces. They don't have 3 spots to sign 3 first-round picks.
Yeah.
And Bolmaro just signed a 3-year deal or a 3-year extension in Barcelona. I feel like that's most probably because Barcelona just wants to get some extra money on his buyout. But at that case, just like I mean, they can just leave him over there. I don't know. Boston likes to take a lot of foreign guys and like Abu Sele and like just got. I mean, they haven't always worked out, but it's. I mean, I'm pretty sure between a point guard because I think Boston can maybe use a point guard and Bolmaro, but they're still point guards. And I mean,
Yeah, Wanamaker's contract's up.
yeah, I mean, Bolmaro, he needs to develop. I think you could just leave him in Barcelona, find Boston, and don't have to roster him now. And he can come in. And I think if he can develop to be something, he can certainly be a nice piece.
Right.
So,
You just hope his bad habits
yeah.
don't continue in Barcelona.
But I mean,
Um,
truthfully, the main reason is just because he might not take up a roster spot and Boston doesn't
right,
have
that
roster
too.
spots to pair.
Yep.
That's mainly the reason I have him taking this pick. Although I don't hate it in the first place, just from a player aspect.
Yeah, so on a slightly similar wavelength of Boston kind of needing that guard, with Wanamaker's contract up, but I don't know how much I trust Romeo Langford. I have them taking Tyrell Terry, guard from Stanford. He is another one of those good scorers. 41% from three, 89% free throw. In college, finished at the rim well, shooter from all aspects. He shot it from deep. So he's full NBA range, can kind of be that pick and roll playmaker. Um, he competes on defense. Just, I think he can come in, kind of be the bench scorer for them. Um, can facilitate if he needs to. I mean, if they have no other options. Um, he's just really small. I mean, he is 6'2", 160 with a 6'2" wingspan. So he will be targeted a lot on defense by teams, especially. And he's not great defensively either to begin with. Um, I think most of that's from an effort standpoint, not really fighting through screens, kind of being very reactionary instead of being alert, but his just scoring potential is there. And yeah, I think he's just a good piece to have on your bench.
Yeah, his shooting is the thing that sticks out the most for me. I think he's probably a top 3 shooter in the draft, I would say. And I mean, the size is concerning. You'd hope he can bulk up in a
Yeah.
NBA weight program, but I mean, his height isn't terribly bad.
No, it's the
And
more 160 that worries me.
yeah, and maybe the wingspan a little.
Yeah, only
But
6'2".
yeah, but I mean, I'm not sure how much he'll contribute right away. I just don't know how to feel about Terry as much in general because he's one of the widest margins I see amongst people. Like I'll see some people put him in like the as like a lottery pick, and then some people put him in like the second round. I think this late first is a solid spot for him, but I think he might need a little time to develop. But the potential is definitely there, and just as I said, I think he's a top 3 shooter in the draft, and he can come in and just contribute. Hopefully, as a shooter right away. And what else he can get is more. And Boston could also use a point guard.
Yeah, I think in my draft, I had them taking a point guard with their first pick, um, which might be kind of tricky drafting 2 guards, but I think Tyrell Terry can play shooting guard more probably. So it could be okay.
Yeah.
So moving on to pick 27, getting close to the end, I have Knicks taking Desmond Bain. He's a 22-year-old shooting guard from TCU, 6'6", and a really small 6'4" wingspan. Um, I mean, the Knicks just need talent. They have a lot of money and not a lot of good players. So, um, there he can kind of be a secondary playmaker. He's a good team defender, jump in the passing lanes, get it rotating. Probably doesn't have quite all that speed and explosiveness you would want. So struggling at the rim, I think, could be difficult for him. Um, he's not the best at creating shots, but I think probably coming off a screen or kind of being a spot up shooter, I think is kind of where I see his role.
Yeah. I guess just as talking about Terry, I see Bane as one of the top 3, 4 shooters. Just I guess off the top of my head, I'd probably say that's Naismith, Bane, Terry, and Isaiah Joe, who we'll probably have in the second round. But
Right.
I New York definitely needs shooting. It's probably the reason why I mocked Naismith to them in the first round. And it like I mean, you just it's just there's no talent. You need to add shooting. If you want RJ Barrett to succeed, I think you need to add shooters around him. And I think RJ's a great piece and definitely a guy you can build your team around. And at this point, like I think Bane's a great pick 'cause he'll come in and contribute right away. He's a little older, but with that, he is more poised to come in and be ready. He's already got a great frame though. I mean, just like with his weight, he's very strong. 215 pounds. He can maybe play a little bit of both spots of the wing, maybe even a little combo guard. I don't know. I see him. I mean, I think he's probably more of like a two, but he's maybe.
Yeah, I see
I
him
could
as
see
a
him
combo
play.
guard, I think.
I could see him play 1 through 3 though, in a sense, and just in a team where, as you said, that doesn't have talent. That's just
Sure.
a great pick to add. And I guess with adding talent, at 27, I have the Knicks taking Theo Maledon from France, which is just a fantastic pick here. He's I think he's probably the guy with the most talent available. Not really close on my board. I mean, maybe like McDaniels, but
Yeah, I think I have him as the highest on mine.
yeah, it's like I in my first mock draft, I looked at it and Maledon was the first player that stuck out. Like, how was he here at 27? I see him more as like a maybe even like a fringe lottery player, but it's just hard to find a fit for him with so many point guards in the draft. I mean, I could see maybe going to like the Heat because he's a great facilitator, but I'm not complaining if I'm New York. A lot of people think they need to take a point guard in the first, and I'd probably agree. But if Ball, Halliburton, and Hayes are gone like they were on my board by the time the Knicks pick,
Mhm.
you could. I mean, I don't think it would be a terrible idea if you want to take another point guard that early, maybe like a Lewis or an Anthony or someone. But I would still just take the best talent. I'm taking Naismith for a very similar reason why I think Bane would fit well there, just being that shooter and just surrounding them with shooters. But I think New York's in a great position to take a point guard. If they don't take a point guard at 8, I don't think it's the end of the world. They can get a guy like Maledon maybe, or maybe some other guys that are on the board who are all the way at 27. This is just an incredibly valued pick at a position in need. And Maledon's a great guy to come in. I think he's one of the best facilitators out of the point guards in the draft. He's a tremendous playmaker. His shooting stats weren't the best, but I think he has a really great shot. Like, it looks phenomenal. I think he has great defensive potential. I just think I think there's some potential that Maledon could be a top point guard in this draft. He might be a little raw, but he has tremendous size at 6'5", 180, and almost a 6'9" wingspan. That it's a great potential pick and probably one of my favorite picks in the draft.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like Maledon a lot. I think he's way more talented than his spot he's being drafted at, but
Yep.
this draft is just so point guard heavy. Um, I think he just falls as a place of need. The teams drafting other positions. So yeah, at New York, it's a good value pick.
Yep, definitely.
Who do you have to the Lakers?
I've at 28, Lakers have Desmond Bain, who we just talked about, and it's it's a bit different situation because New York is deprived of talent, where the Lakers definitely have talent, but Bain can come in and contribute right away. As I said, he can be a great shooter. I think they need a guy who can shoot, especially at that two position. I think Bain is probably probably one of the most perfect picks they could have, just about who for the Lakers with who should be available around here. He can just his contribution really be great, and they have a lot of questions I think at that shooting guard position.
Yeah,
And to get a guy who's like a true like shooting guard, true guard who can actually shoot would do wonders for that team.
yeah. I mean, LeBron always likes his guys who can just come in, hit some threes, maybe play a little defense, coming off the bench. So I really like that fit. At 28, though, I have them taking Daniel Oturu. I think just with the contracts that are expiring with the Lakers, not sure if they're going to bring some of these guys back. They need post depth. Um, I don't know if I really like the fit as kind of at that five. The Lakers like a more traditional guy. At least this season they have. Um, but I think Oturu's talent is just too good to pass up, and I didn't really know where else to put him. But I thought he was a
Yeah,
first round talent for sure. So he could go a little early, maybe to Boston, but um, he was just too good of a player in a position of need for LA. So
yeah.
that's where I have him
Also, just
going.
his shot as well can be an
Right.
asset.
Yeah.
As I just said, they could use shooting pretty much anywhere you want it, and he could bring a. I think he definitely brings a different aspect or different like style of play to some of the other centers in their roster.
Yeah. It could be a nice change of pace for them.
Hmm.
Um, so almost finishing up the second round with or the first round, sorry, pick 29 to Toronto. Um, I have them taking Leandro Bolmaro, who we just talked about. Um, it's different than I wrote down, but I think Bolmaro's still there on my draft. No, he's not. No, I had him taking. No, Theo Maladon. That's what I meant to pick. Um, like you said, just his ability to facilitate. Um, I think the Raptors could use a backup point guard, and um, Maladon is just such a good passer and a good playmaker for the other people on the team. Um, I don't see the Raptors having a strong scoring bench necessarily too much. We still got Norman Powell. Um, he kind of plays with the starters though sometimes. So,
Okay.
but I have Maladon pretty high on my list of point guards, and he's only 19 and already has the passing abilities that he does with solid size. I think he just kind of fits Toronto's pick there.
Yeah, that's a great pick. They just have their 2 point guards with Van Vliet and Lowry, but I would assume Van Vliet would probably be gone because you'd think he'd get paid
Yeah,
somewhere.
he's going to get a lot of money.
And Lowry's definitely getting up there in age, but I think he's can still contribute for sure.
Hmm.
But if especially if Van Vliet goes, or even if they start Van Vliet with Lowry, there's just not really anyone to come off the bench at point guard there. And
Right.
look at other positions they have. They have some nice post players with like Boucher, and they have a lot of just kind of interesting wing players like Terrence Davis, Patrick McCaw, Malcolm Miller, like Hernandez. Like they have a lot of guys who mean, I don't think it's great, but they definitely have wing depth there. But point guard's definitely a lacking position, and
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of
just
post
EPA.
player contracts up, so,
Yeah,
um, kind of interesting to see who they end up actually signing there. Um,
yeah. I mean, following a similar route, I'm taking Tyrell Terry. It's I think he's arguably the best point guard left. There's still some
yeah,
great point guards,
definitely.
but not even just thinking to take a point guard. It's just I think the value's there with Terry. Phenomenal shooter. He can certainly contribute minutes right away for them, and I think it's a pretty easy pick for Toronto if he's there. I wouldn't think that hard. I'd just probably go and take him.
Yeah, I see him meshing well, I think, in Toronto. I think Kyle Lowry could help him a lot, just kinda being an undersized guard in the NBA, but still being very productive.
Yep.
I like that pick.
Well, going to the last pick, I have Boston taking Jaden McDaniels, and I have no idea where to put McDaniels. I just kind of put him with Boston just because he has that potential, and they have so many picks. Why not just take a shot on the potential if I'm there?
Yep.
I feel like he'd probably go early second if, at least in my board here, if he didn't go here. I know you had him going much earlier, I believe 17. But as I said earlier, there's just so many concerns, but the just the talent and the size he possesses is such an intriguing pick where there's definitely a lot of potential there. Certainly the highest potential left on the board, and he can take some time to develop. Maybe they can send him down to Maine, but just why
Mhm.
not take potential at this point if I'm Boston with the third first round pick?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's gonna be tough for them. I mean, they don't have the spots to keep all of these guys, so, um, maybe they trade back from here. Um, maybe they wanna keep that first rounder just for the contract purposes here. I don't know, hard to say, but, yeah, if Jaden McDaniels is still on the board, yeah, I had him at 17, so I think it's a real solid value pick here. But I instead had them, if they can somehow figure out how to keep all these guys, I had them taking, Zeke Naji, my 3rd Arizona guy in the first round here, kind of in the post-lottery picks. He's a 19-year-old center, 6'11", 240, with a 7'1" wingspan. Um, I think he really stood out this year. He exceeded expectations. Kind of ended up being probably the best player in Arizona, which was very unexpected. Um, very efficient near the basket, runs the floor, kind of plays that dunker role again, which is a position kind of going out of the NBA as he doesn't really have a three-pointer. Um, his defense is okay. He's a good rebounder. Um, he doesn't get as many blocks as I think you would expect for someone his size, but just his strength and size and some of his athleticism, I think he can play a role for someone out there and hopefully develop more to his game. But I think he can help fulfill kind of a post need. Their guys don't stand out too much to me in Boston. I think they could use some more post depth. So that's what I have them taking.
Yeah. I really like Najee. I didn't have him going in my first round, but there's just I have like all these lower end post players you have like Oturu, Carey, Najee, Isaiah Stewart. I think Najee might have the potential to be the best out of all of them. He he's so athletic, and
Yeah.
I think I think he's maybe just like Wiseman light in this draft. I think he can do a lot of things similar. He's just the athleticism is there. He's a great rim runner. He can definitely dunk it. He he can rebound, as you said. The shot's a question, but I think there's at least a little bit of potential there. maybe more so than some other guys here, where just combining everything together, I think he has a solid shot at being the best post player out of these bottom tier guys, and
Yeah.
it's a great pick for whoever takes him.
He shows he's a mid-range, so
Yeah.
I hope he can just extend that a little bit more and get maybe a three-pointer.
Mhm.
So yeah, that finishes up the first round.
Yep. Thanks for listening this week, and please rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform. This helps other listeners find our podcast. Next week, we will talk about the rest or the second round.
Yeah, we'll look at the second round. We'll just do the whole round in one episode. Um, but please follow us on social media. That helps us a lot. Spread the word. We're on Twitter at Miracle Sports NW, and then Instagram and Facebook at Miracle Sports Network. And then we also post our episodes to YouTube under Miracle Sports Network. So please subscribe and get some views and like the videos and comment and retweet, like us on Facebook. And yeah, we'll see you next week to finish the second round. And you can also find our website at anchor.fm/thehookshot. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.